Welcome to the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. We discuss 6 questions in 9 minutes because leaders know how to be concise. Let's go ahead and get started. Our first question, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
So my name is Dean Abbott. I have been in the space that's now called data science for 33 years, back before. So data science, like our AI now, before that it was kind of predictive analytics or business analytics or advanced analytics. Before that it was data mining. And before that, way back in the day, it was pattern recognition. And so I've been essentially doing the same kind of analysis, statistical learning, machine learning for 30 some odd years. Back with before anybody really cared, and now everyone cares. So it's really fun to see how much it's grown.
You were doing it before it was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, back in the day, like with NASA and pocket protectors, when that was cool. I mean, I'm not quite that old, but it's kind of that feel to it.
That's great. Thank you. Question number 2, what's the best thing about working with a team?
Teams bring energy and variety and vitality that's hard to replicate with just an individual. I mean, you can work with just one person and or you can try to do it all yourself. But there's something about the experiences, the shared experiences of a team that brings things to the table that you just can't replicate. So I love getting those minds together and having those aha moments when one person will jump in with a refinement on how we're trying to solve a problem. Then somebody else brings up something that the others just really hadn't thought about before because their experiences and their backgrounds is a little bit different. So that kind of diversity that brought together in a team really helps, and something you can't replicate just with an individual learning.
That's such a great comment because I love the idea of innovation, collaboration, and new ideas, problem solving, all of those things that come from a team that's really harmonized and working together. That's a great visual you've created. Thank you. Question number 3, I hear from other leaders of teams that it can be a challenge to get team members engaged. Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, I've worked mostly with smaller teams, sometimes with larger teams. With smaller teams, it's a lot easier, of course, because you've got more face time with the individuals, and you've got more chance to really understand the individuals. But the things that I find most helpful with larger teams, especially like in my company now, there are 50, 60, 70 people to try to get everyone engaged, is first of all knowing the individuals, and you have to assess individuals. What makes an individual tick? Now, how do you get the most potential out of each individual? Some people are very they're individualistic. They want that alone time. Just so you give them a task, you let them go away, and they come back with the contribution. Others really need more coddling. You come alongside with them, you encourage them, you give regular updates, just even if it's quick, just to check in and see how it's doing, so they don't flounder. And so understanding that psychology of the individuals is really important, and that can only occur when you know them well enough to get that kind of information. So you need to spend time with the individuals. Now, if the team is too big, so you really can't spend that regular time with the individuals, having sergeants, lieutenants who you trust and can go in there and have that face-to-face or regular individual time to peel back the onion and understand what makes people tick, it's critically important, because really we're trying to unleash the potential that all these team members have. And it's not easy to do, because it's not always obvious from the interview where what things really motivate them and how they can be helped to work together with the team and solve the problem. So it takes clock time with each individual.
I really like that phrase you said a little bit earlier about the psychology of the individual. And I could not agree more. It is such a critical element to get to know each person individually at all levels and in all perspectives. I love what you said. That's excellent information and excellent advice. Thank you. Question number 4, what other piece of advice would you have for leaders of teams?
Well, organizationally, it's important for a team leader to have both a strategic and a tactical understanding of what the team is trying to accomplish. So the strategic part is critical because usually you're the one who's setting the tone and setting the long-term direction for what the team is trying to accomplish. And you don't want the individual team members to necessarily be spending all the cycles trying to think, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the road. But that's something as a team leader you really need to be thinking about, so that you can. I think of it sometimes like a puzzle that you're trying to put together, and you need all the pieces to fit just right. So that doesn't necessarily mean that every individual is going to be optimized every day, but it means that and I'm speaking mathematically because I'm a mathematician, but optimizing for the long haul is so important for the team. So there's like an ebb and a flow to the way teams work. Sometimes it's more intense, sometimes less intense. Sometimes you really have to bang out that solution in the timeline. Sometimes you've got more time to think through the solution. So you need to have that kind of perspective, long-term perspective, so that the individuals can focus on the tactical, on the next steps. But the reason why I'd say you need both of those in play is, even for those who are the most tactically driven, just trying to knock out that next increment, like in an agile framework, you're looking at a half day at a time, or maybe 2 hours at a time. They still need to have that forward-looking strategic vision for where this is going, how this fits into that puzzle that's going to be pieced together over the next week or 2 weeks or 3 months.
Wow, great ideas. I really like what you're sharing there about the leadership perspective and providing that vision that's so important for the teams to have the agility, as you say, within kind of those micro steps, but still have that long-term vision. It's such great ideas, great counsel for us. Question number 5, what other successful leaders of teams, such as yourself, would you like to recognize that have had a positive influence in your life?
One person that I've really thought about in this respect, his name is James Taylor, and he is a decision management consultant and has a consulting company that does this. He works a lot with businesses themselves to help them understand how to make better decisions with analytics organizationally. The reason why I like thinking about James, the way he accomplishes these things, he's such a clear thinker, and clarity is just gold with this kind of leadership, because one of the ways I see a lot of projects fail is because there isn't that clarity from the very beginning of a project. What problem are we really trying to solve? And to crystallize it, distill it down into those essential elements is very difficult. In fact, on my bookshelf behind me, I've got a ton of books, all these kind of popular analytics books. The ones that I really like reading the most really are not so much the super technical books. They're the books that describe in the field of analytics how to think about problem solving, because that's where most projects fail. So James I love because he's such a clear thinker about those kinds of problems. Another person I think about is a colleague and friend named John Elder, who's got a company, Elder Research. It's probably the biggest data science, pure play data science consulting company in the US. And John has built this from scratch, 20, 30 years ago. And he's maintained with that company this vision for solving problems with data science and what it was called back then. And consistently over the years, it's really hard to maintain cohesion and keep employees, your key employees, around with you that long. That takes a lot of, it takes you need to be personable and able to lead the team, not just technically, but on a personal level, get people to grow with you, infuse that vision. There's a lot of piece of that dynamic that's really hard for an entrepreneur to put together.
Well, thank you for recognizing those individuals. They sound like fantastic people that have really nailed it when it comes to leading and how they can help the organization or the team move forward. So thank you for recognizing them. Question number 6, tell us about your first job.
My first job, I'm so thankful for my first job. So my first job was right out of grad school. I was in University of Virginia, get a master's in applied math. And I saw on the bulletin boards back then, that some mainframe had these bulletin board thing, a job. And it was doing optimal control for a local company. And this was an aerospace engineer. His name was Roger Barron, aerospace engineer who sold a company called Adaptronics, started a new small company. He was like a gentleman farmer. He had 200 acres of land, but he still put in like 300 hours a month of just like grinded out problem solving small business. The reason why that job was so important to me is that's where I was introduced to statistical learning and how valuable it could be, even for something like the early smart bomb days. We're guiding missiles and dumb bombs and turn them into intelligent bombs using statistical learning and something like a neural network. But it was also the work ethic that I saw in him, the way he tried to solve problems. And I'll never forget a conversation I had with him about when you're proposing a solution like a small business innovative research project, SBIR, how do you know what's going to work? I mean, you're doing research. And he just went through, you've got to have this gut feel about what it'll take to solve it. Even though if you don't know what the solution is going to be, over time, you just get the feeling, you say, I think we can solve this. And building up that intuition was so important to making that company succeed. And almost everybody with that company ended up going into data science. So he succeeded from that standpoint. It was an aerospace engineering company, but it's the statistical learning, machine learning stuff that was the most energizing. And that's what I'm most passionate about today.
Well, obviously he instilled a fire within all of those folks then if they all went on to do it. So
Yes.
well, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Dean, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. How can people find you?
You can Google search me. That's probably the easiest way. Dean Abbott, Abbott, two B's, two T's. You can find me on LinkedIn and on Twitter. On Twitter, I'm Dean Abb, DeanAbb. And you can search for me on LinkedIn. I'm in San Diego. I'm the co-founder and chief data scientist of SmarterHQ. And so you can do that. And I'm happy to connect with you. If anybody wants to connect, I do recommend to give some context because I typically only connect with people I've met, either physically or virtually. So just mention you saw me in the podcast and I'll be happy to connect with you.
Great. Thank you. This is Sean Richards with the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. For more ideas, you can find us on LinkedIn by searching Blue Sky Business Consulting. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.